The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and Yuna stepped onto the docking platform of the Galactic Academy of Unified Sciences. She stood there for a moment, her small bag hanging from her shoulder, her eyes wide as she took in the massive structure before her. The academy floated in the darkness of space like a city made of light and metal. Ships of all sizes moved around it like fish swimming around a reef. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. She was also completely alone. Yuna was 19 years old. She had spent 3 years studying harder than anyone at her Earth University just to qualify for the exchange program. She had beaten out 10,000 other applicants. Her parents had cried when she left. Her little brother had made her promise to bring back something cool from space. She had promised him a star if she could find one small enough to carry Dot. Now she was here, and she realized that all her preparation meant nothing. The other students moved past her on the platform. A group of Velk walked by first. They were tall, nearly 3 meters, with scales that looked like polished black stone. Their eyes were yellow and cold. One of them glanced at Yuna and made a sound that might have been a laugh. She did not understand their language yet, but she understood that sound perfectly well done. Behind the Velk came a pair of Mirians. They were slender and pale, almost ghostly, with large dark eyes that seemed to look through her rather than at her. Yuna felt something brush against her mind, like fingers flipping through the pages of a book. One of the Mirians smiled. It was not a kind smile. Yuna gripped the strap of her bag tighter and started walking. Academy was built for species much larger than humans. The hallways were wide enough to fly a small ship through. The ceilings disappeared into shadow high above. Every door, every control panel, every piece of furniture was scaled for beings that made Yuna feel like a child in a world of giants. She had to jump to reach the elevator buttons. When she finally found her dormitory, the bed was so large she could have fit 3 of herself on it. Her roommate was already there when she arrived. Her name was Sue, and she was from a water world called Mirren Prime. She had smooth blue-green skin and large eyes that blinked sideways. Gills fluttered on the sides of her neck. She looked at Yuna with obvious curiosity. "You are the human," Sue said. Her voice was soft and bubbling, like water over stones. "I am," Yuna replied. "My name is Yuna." "I know. Everyone knows." Sue tilted her head. "You are smaller than I expected." The report said humans were medium-sized. Yuna smiled despite herself. "I am medium-sized. For a human female." Sue considered this. "The galaxy is very large," she said finally. "And you are very small in it. I hope you are also very strong." Yuna did not know how to answer that, so she simply nodded and began unpacking her things. The first weeks were difficult. The classes moved at a speed that made Yuna's head spin. Concepts that other students learned as children were advanced theory to her. She stayed up late every night, reading, studying, trying to understand physics that bent her mind into knots. She ate alone in the massive dining hall, surrounded by aliens who looked at her like she was a curiosity in a museum. The whispers followed her everywhere. She heard words she did not understand, but she learned to recognize laughter in any language. They called her things she could only guess. At, primitive, simple, animal. The translator in her ear could not keep up. With all the slurs, the worst was a senior Velk. Student named Doha. He was the son of a powerful merchant family, and he walked through the academy like he owned it. Maybe he did. His scales were darker than the others, almost purple-black, and when he extended his claws, they gleamed like knives. He had a group of followers who went everywhere with him. They called themselves the Apex Circle, and they had decided that Yuna was their favorite target. It started small. Doha would walk past her in the hallway and knock her tablet from her hands. His followers would laugh. A Mirian girl named Rin would broadcast Yuna's embarrassment telepathically to everyone nearby, so they could all feel her shame and fear. A four-armed Tokai named Voss would block doorways when she tried to enter, forcing her to wait until he felt like moving. Yuna reported the incidents to the Academy administration. A board official took her statement and filed it away. Nothing happened. She reported again and again. The file grew thicker. The response remained the same. Nothing. Humans have no standing here, the official finally told her. Your species is probationary. You have no political weight. These are the children of important families. Perhaps you should try harder to fit in. Yuna walked out of that office with her hands shaking. But she did not cry. She had stopped crying after the first week. Professor Kang found her sitting alone in the botanical garden that night. He was the only other human at the academy, a visiting lecturer in xenobiology. He was older, maybe 50 Earth years, with gray in his hair and kind eyes that had seen too much. You should go home, he said, sitting beside her. This place is not ready for us yet. I cannot go home, Yuna replied. My family gave everything for me to be here. My country is counting on me. I am the first. If I fail, there might not be a second. Kang sighed. Then be careful. Humans have a reputation in the galaxy. We are seen as dangerous, unpredictable. If you give them a reason to fear you, they will destroy you. Yuna looked at him. What kind of reputation? We are persistent predators, Kang said quietly. We evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We do not give up. We do not forget. And when we are cornered, he paused. Wow, let us just say the galaxy has learned to be cautious around cornered humans. Yuna thought about this for a long time. I am just here to learn. Professor, she said finally. Kang nodded slowly, but his eyes were worried. Just remember that learning goes both ways. They are studying you too. Every moment. Every reaction. They want to know what makes humans break. Yuna looked up at the artificial stars glowing in the garden's domed ceiling. Somewhere beyond them, Earth was spinning in its little corner of the galaxy. Her family was sleeping. Her brother was dreaming of the star she had promised him. Then I will have to make sure they never find out, she said. She returned to her dormitory that night and began a new file on her tablet. She titled it simply, Documentation. Then she started writing down everything that had happened since she arrived. Every incident, every name, every date. If they wanted to study her, she would study them right back. And when the time came, she would be ready. The second semester began with rain. Not real rain, of course. The academy was in space. But the environmental systems created weather in the biodomes. And that morning, the sky above the main campus was gray and weeping. Yuna thought it matched her mood perfectly. She had survived her first semester. More than survived. Her grades had climbed from the very bottom of her class to somewhere in the middle. The professors had started noticing her. One of them, a four-eyed creature from a world she could not pronounce, had even called her work surprisingly adequate in front of the entire lecture hall. For a human, that was practically a standing ovation. This did not make Doha happy. Yuna noticed the change immediately. Before, the harassment had been casual, almost lazy. Doha and his friends had tormented her the way a child might torment an insect. It was entertainment, a way to pass the time. But now there was something different in Doha's yellow eyes when he looked at her. Something that looked almost like hatred. The attacks became more personal. More planned. Her research project for advanced stellar mechanics was sabotaged. 3 months of work erased from the Academy servers in a single night. The security systems showed no evidence of tampering. When Yuna reported it, the administration shrugged. Perhaps you should have kept better backups, they said. Her personal belongings began to disappear. First her photos of home. Then her brother's letter, the one he had written in careful English because he wanted her to be able to read it to her alien friends. Then her mother's necklace, a simple gold chain that had been in their family for 4 generations. Rin, the Mirian telepath, started visiting her dreams. Yuna would fall asleep exhausted from studying and wake up screaming, her mind full of images she could not escape. Her family dying in fires, Earth burning in the darkness of space. Herself, alone and forgotten, drifting through an endless void. She learned to sleep in short bursts, never more than an hour at a time, just to limit Rin's access to her unconscious mind. Voss and the other Tokai began cornering her in empty hallways. They never touched her. They did not need to. Voss would simply stand in her path, all 4 arms spread wide, blocking any escape. Then he would lean down until his face was close to hers. "Run home, little human," he would whisper. "Run home before something bad happens." Yuna did not run. She stood perfectly still, looking up at him without blinking, until he got bored and moved away. Every time. No matter how long it took. No matter how fast her heart was beating. Sue watched all of this with growing concern. "You need to tell someone," she said one night, finding Yuna sitting in the dark of their room, unable to sleep. "This has gone too far." "I have told everyone," Yuna replied. Her voice was flat, empty. "They do not care. Humans have no standing here. I am nothing to them. Then fight back." Yuna turned to look at her roommate. In the dim light, Sue's blue-green skin looked almost silver. Her large eyes reflected what little light there was. "If I fight back, they will expel me," Yuna said. "Doha's family is powerful. My species has no protection. I would be sent home in disgrace, and everything I have worked for would be destroyed." Sue was quiet for a long moment. "Then what will you do?" Yuna did not answer. Instead, she turned back to her tablet and continued reading. She had been spending her nights in the restricted archives, studying everything she could find about the other species at the academy. Not their culture, not their art, their military history, their anatomy, their weaknesses. The Velk had armored scales, but the scales were thinnest at the joints. A strike to the inner elbow, the back of the knee, or the throat could cause immense pain. The Mirians were powerful telepaths, but their abilities required concentration. Disruption of that concentration, through pain or surprise, could scramble their mental abilities for hours. The Tokai had 4 arms and tremendous strength, but their balance depended on a sensitive organ in their lower back. Damage to that organ would make standing nearly impossible. Yuna memorized all of it. Every weakness, every vulnerability. She did not know when she would need this information. She only knew that she would need it eventually. Professor Kang found her in the archives one night, surrounded by files that she definitely should not have had access to. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice quiet and careful. "Research," Yuna replied without looking up. "This is military intelligence. Combat analysis. How did you even get in here?" Yuna finally raised her eyes. They were different than they had been when she first arrived. Harder, older. "I am a human," she said simply. "We are very good at getting into places we are not supposed to be." Kang sat down across from her. He looked at the files spread out on the table. Velk anatomy, Mirian psychology, Tokai physiology. His face grew pale. "Yuna," he said slowly, "what are you planning?" "Nothing." She began gathering the files. "I am just preparing. Humans are persistence predators, remember? We do not give up. We do not forget. And we always prepare for what comes next. This is not preparation. This is..." He stopped, unable to find the right word. "Adaptation," Yuna finished for him. It is what we do." She left him sitting there in the archives, surrounded by the ghosts of wars he had never fought. 2 weeks later, Doha made his move. Yuna was studying in the engineering sublevel when they found her. It was late, past midnight by Earth time. The sublevel was supposed to be empty. She had chosen it specifically because no one ever came down there. But Doha had been watching her, learning her patterns, hunting her the way his ancestors had once hunted prey across the plains of his homeworld. They came from both ends of the corridor. 7 of them. Doha in the front, his claws extended. Rin beside him, her dark eyes already reaching for Yuna's mind. Voss and 4 others behind, blocking any escape. "Hello, little human," Doha said. His voice echoed in the empty hallway. "Did you think we would not find you?" Yuna looked at them. 7 predators from 3 different species. All of them larger than her, stronger than her, more experienced in violence than her. The smart thing would be to beg, to apologize, to promise to leave the academy and never return. But Yuna had never been very good at doing the smart thing. She set down her tablet carefully. Then she removed her jacket and folded it neatly beside her. Finally, she reached up and took out the small recording device she had been wearing in her hair since the day she arrived at the academy. She pressed a button on it, making sure the light turned green to show it was active. "No," she said quietly. "I knew you would find me. I have been waiting." Doha laughed. It was an ugly sound. Waiting? For what? "Do you think someone will save you?" "No one is coming, human. No one cares about you." Yuna smiled. It was not a kind smile. "I was not waiting to be saved," she said. "I was waiting for you to make a mistake." She shifted her weight slightly. Her hands came up, loose and ready. "And you just did." 3 years passed. The galaxy changed. And Yuna changed with it. She graduated at the top of her class. Not in the top 10. Not in the top 5. The very top. The human girl who had arrived knowing nothing, who had struggled to keep pace with species that had been traveling between stars when her ancestors were still living in caves, had beaten them all. Her thesis was called Predator Assumptions and the Prey Response: How Underestimation Shapes Interstellar Relations. It was a study of how dominant species treated those they considered lesser, and how those lesser species adapted and survived. The Academy's review board called it brilliant. Several universities requested copies. Within a year, it was required reading at 17 institutions across the galaxy. She was offered positions everywhere. Research centers on wealthy worlds. Teaching posts at prestigious academies. Government advisory roles with species that had once looked at humans as primitive curiosities. The offers came with impressive titles and generous compensation and promises of influence and respect. Yuna turned them all down. Instead, she went back to the academy, back to the place where she had been tormented and ignored and nearly destroyed. She walked through the same hallways where she had once been cornered. She sat in the same classrooms where students had laughed at her. She ate in the same dining hall where she had sat alone, surrounded by beings who saw her as nothing. But she did not come back as a student. Her official title was Advisor to Developing Species Students. It was a new position, created specifically for her, funded by the reforms that had followed her case. Her job was simple. Make sure that what happened to her never happened to anyone else. Unofficially, she was something more. The students called her the Guardian. The staff called her the Warning. New arrivals from developing species were told about her on their first day. They were told about the small human girl who had fought 7 predators and won. They were told that if anyone tried to harm them, they should go to her. And if anyone was thinking about harming them, they were told to remember what had happened to the last group that had tried. Incidents of harassment dropped by 90% in her first year. They dropped to nearly zero in her second. She was not always kind. She was not always gentle. Sometimes new students came to her office expecting sympathy and left with a reading list and a training schedule. She taught them what she had learned, that survival in a hostile galaxy required knowledge, preparation, and an absolute refusal to be a victim. "No one is coming to save you," she would tell them. "You have to save yourself. But I will teach you how." Her methods were controversial. Some faculty members complained that she was teaching violence, that she was encouraging students to fight instead of report, that she was creating problems instead of solving them. Yuna did not care. "I am not teaching violence," she told the faculty council. "I am teaching survival. There is a difference. Violence is attacking someone because you want to hurt them. Survival is defending yourself when you have no other choice. Every student I train hopes they will never need what I teach them. But if they do need it, they will be ready." The council could not argue with her results. Under her guidance, developing species students achieved better grades, reported higher satisfaction, and integrated more successfully into academy life. Several went on to become leaders in their fields. All of them credited her with their success. Sue was one of them. The quiet amphibian who had once warned Yuna that the galaxy was very large had become a leading researcher in interspecies communication. She returned to the academy as a visiting lecturer, and the first thing she did was find Yuna's office. They sat together in the quiet evening, looking out at the stars through the window. "Do you ever regret it?" Sue asked. "What you did to them?" Yuna considered the question. She had been asked it many times over the years. Reporters asked it. Students asked it. Even Ambassador Ji-hoon had asked it once, in a quiet moment after a diplomatic function. "I regret that they made it necessary," she said finally. "I regret that there was no other way. I regret that young people can be so cruel to each other, and that institutions can be so blind to suffering." She paused. "But do I regret defending myself?" "No, never. I would do it again if I had to." Sue nodded slowly. "They thought they were teaching you a lesson that night, but you taught them instead." "I taught everyone," Yuna said. "That was the point. It was never about me. It was never about Doha or his friends. It was about every human who would come after me. Every student from a developing species. Everyone who was ever told they were too small, or too weak, or too primitive to belong here." She turned from the window. "I proved that we belong. Not by asking for permission, not by waiting for acceptance, but by being so good, so strong, so impossible to ignore that they had no choice but to make room for us." Sue was quiet for a moment. "Is that why you came back? To make sure they kept making room?" Yuna smiled. It was a warmer smile than the one she had worn in that sublevel 3 years ago. Softer, but there was still steel beneath it. "I came back because this is where I learned what I was capable of. This is where I stopped being afraid. This is where I became who I was supposed to be." She looked around her office, at the awards on the walls, at the messages of thanks from former students, at the small gold necklace that had been returned to her after Doha's expulsion. "This is my home now, and I will protect it." On the anniversary of the fight, Yuna walked through the engineering sublevel. It had been cleaned and renovated. There was no sign of what had happened there, but she remembered. She would always remember. A group of students passed her in the corridor. They were from 5 different species, including 2 humans. When they saw her, they stopped and bowed their heads in respect. "Good evening, Advisor Yuna," one of them said. "Good evening," she replied. "Study hard, look out for each other, and remember what you are capable of." They nodded and continued on their way, talking and laughing together as if the differences between their species meant nothing at all. Yuna watched them go. Somewhere out there in the galaxy, other humans were studying at other academies. working at other institutions, building lives among the stars. They faced challenges she could not imagine, but they faced them with the knowledge that one of their own had stood against impossible odds and refused to break. That was her legacy. Not the fight, not the fame. The simple fact that she had survived, and in surviving, had shown her species what was possible. She thought about her brother back on Earth, now grown, now working at the space agency that had once seemed like an impossible dream. She thought about her parents, who had given everything for her to have this chance. She thought about Professor Kang, who had warned her about the reputation of humans. Dangerous, he had called them. Unpredictable, something the galaxy had learned to be cautious around. Yuna thought about all the students she had helped over the years, all the lives she had changed, all the lessons she had taught, not just about survival, but about courage and determination and the refusal to accept limits. Humans were dangerous, that was true, but they were also teachers and builders and dreamers. They were a species that looked at the stars and said, "We can reach those." They were a species that fell down and got back up, again and again, until standing was the only option left. The galaxy had tried to corner her once. It had learned a hard lesson that night. Now, Yuna was making sure it never forgot. She turned and walked back toward her office, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. Behind her, the stars burned. In the darkness of space, bright and eternal and full of possibilities. Somewhere out there, another human was taking their first steps into the unknown. Yuna smiled. They would be ready. Doha moved first. He always moved first. That was his nature. He was a Velk, born from a long line of hunters, and hunters did not wait. They struck. His claws sliced through the air where Yuna's throat had been half a second before. But Yuna was no longer there. She had studied Velk combat patterns for 3 months. She knew that they always opened with a throat strike. It was instinct. Thousands of years of evolution had programmed it into their muscles. Doha could not have stopped himself even if he had wanted to. Yuna dropped low, sliding under his arm, and drove her elbow into the soft tissue behind his knee. The scales there were thin. She had measured them in the anatomical diagrams. Her strike landed perfectly, and Doha's leg buckled. He fell forward, surprised, and Yuna was already moving past him. Ayn reached for her mind. Yuna felt the Mirian's consciousness pressing against her own, trying to find a way in, trying to fill her thoughts with fear and pain and confusion. But Rin needed concentration to use her abilities. She needed a still target. Yuna was not still. She grabbed a maintenance tool from a nearby shelf and threw it at Rin's face. It was not a weapon. It was barely heavier than a book. But it did not need to hurt. It only needed to surprise. Rin flinched backward, her concentration breaking, and her mental attack scattered like smoke in the wind. Voss came next. He was fast for his size, all 4 arms reaching for Yuna at once. He could have crushed her if he had gotten hold of her. Tokai were strong enough to bend metal with their bare hands, but Yuna did not let him get hold of her. She dove between his lower arms and came up behind him. Her hand found the sensitive organ at the base of his spine. She pressed hard, her thumb digging into the exact spot she had memorized from the medical files. Voss screamed. It was a sound she had never heard before, high and broken and full of surprise. He tried to turn, to grab her, but his balance was gone. He fell against the wall and slid down, unable to stand. 3 down. 4 to go, and less than 30 seconds had passed. The others hesitated. That hesitation saved them from worse injuries, but it did not save them entirely. Yuna moved through them like water through rocks. She was not stronger than them. She was not faster than them. But she knew them. She had studied their bodies, their reflexes, their instincts. She knew exactly where to strike to cause the most pain with the least effort. She knew exactly how they would react, and she was always somewhere else when their counterattacks came. A Velk named Taro tried to slash her with his claws. She stepped inside his reach, too close for him to cut her, and struck the nerve cluster under his arm. His entire right side went numb. He fell. A Tokai whose name she did not know swung all 4 fists at her head. She ducked, rolled, and came up behind him. Her foot found the back of his knee. He went down hard. The last 2 tried to run. Yuna let them go for 3 steps. Then she threw a metal pipe at the back of one's head and swept the legs out from under the other. They fell in a tangled heap and did not get up. And then it was just Doha and R.I. Doha was back on his feet. But he was limping. His yellow eyes were wide with something Yuna had never seen in them before. It took her a moment to recognize it. Fear. Pure. Animal fear. "What are you?" he whispered. "I am human," Yuna replied. She was breathing hard, but her voice was steady. "We are persistence predators. We evolved to chase prey until it could not run anymore. We do not give up. We do not forget." She stepped toward him. "And we do not like being cornered." Doha roared and charged. It was a desperate attack, fueled by fear and pride and the knowledge that if he did not win here, everything he believed about himself would be proven false. Yuna sidestepped his rush and caught his arm as he passed. She used his own momentum against him, spinning him around and driving her knee into his stomach. The air left his lungs in a whoosh. Before he could recover, she struck the soft scales at his throat with the edge of her hand. Not hard enough to kill, just hard enough to hurt. Doha collapsed. He lay on the floor, gasping for air, his claws scratching uselessly at the metal beneath him. Rin was the last one standing. She stared at Yuna with those large, dark eyes. Her mind reached out again, searching for weakness, searching for fear. She found something else entirely. In Yuna's mind, there was no fear. There was no panic. There was only cold, clear determination. And beneath that, something ancient and terrible. Something that had evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill you. Where survival meant being willing to do whatever was necessary. Where mercy was a luxury that only the strong could afford. Rin saw all of this in an instant. And she understood, finally, why the galaxy had learned to be afraid of humans. She tried to run. Yun caught her by the arm and pulled her back. One strike to the temple, precise, measured. Rin crumpled like a puppet with its strings cut. The fight was over. It had lasted less than 4 minutes. Yuna stood in the center of the corridor, surrounded by 7 bodies. She was bruised. Her lip was split where Doha's first wild swing had grazed her. There was blood on her hands, though she was not sure if it was hers or theirs. She picked up her tablet and checked that her recording device was still working. The green light blinked steadily. Everything had been captured. Every moment. Every second. The full story, from their arrival to their defeat. She sat down on a nearby crate and began to wait. 2 hours later, the Academy's security forces arrived. They found Yuna exactly where she had been, sitting quietly, reading from her tablet as if nothing had happened. Around her, 7 of the Academy's most prominent students lay broken and groaning. The security chief, a massive Velk named Commander J, looked at the scene with disbelief. "What happened here?" he demanded. Yuna looked up from her reading. Her face was calm, almost peaceful. "They attacked me," she said simply. "I defended myself." She handed him the recording device. "I have evidence." Commander J watched the footage 3 times. By the end, his scales had gone pale. "You did all of this?" he asked quietly. "Alone? Unarmed?" Yuna smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Humans are very adaptable," she said. It is our greatest strength." She stood and brushed dust from her clothes. "Now, if you do not mind, I would like to file a formal complaint. I believe the Academy has some explaining to do." Commander J could only nod. He had been security chief for 40 years. He had seen wars between species. He had seen soldiers and killers and monsters of every kind, but he had never seen anything quite like the small, human girl standing before him, calm and composed, with 7 predators lying defeated at her feet. He understood now why the galaxy feared humans. And for the first time in his life, he feared them too. The news spread through the Academy like fire through dry grass. By morning, everyone knew. The human girl had fought 7 attackers and won. Not just won, destroyed them. The sons and daughters of powerful families, members of predator species that had ruled their corners of the galaxy for thousands of years, had been beaten by a creature half their size with no claws, no scales, no telepathy, no natural weapons of any kind. Some refused to believe it. Surely there had been some trick, some hidden weapon, some form of human technology that gave her an unfair advantage. Then the footage leaked. No one knew how it happened. Perhaps someone in security shared it with a friend. Perhaps the Academy systems were not as secure as everyone believed. Perhaps the universe simply decided that this was a story that needed to be told. Whatever the reason, within 48 hours, the recording was everywhere. News networks across 3 sectors played it on repeat. Analysts broke down every moment of the fight, studying Yuna's movements with a mix of horror and fascination. Species that had never heard of Earth began searching their databases for information about humans. What they found did not comfort them. Humans were persistence predators. They had evolved on a death world, a planet where the gravity was punishing, the weather was violent, and nearly every other species was trying to eat them. They had no natural armor, no telepathy, so they had developed something else. They had developed endurance, intelligence, adaptability, and a capacity for violence that made older, more established species deeply uncomfortable on Earth. The story of Yuna became a sensation overnight. She was called a hero, a symbol, proof that humanity could hold its own in a galaxy that had dismissed them as primitive. Her face appeared on screens around the world. Her name became a rallying cry for human unity in a way that politicians had been trying to achieve for decades. Ambassador. Ji-hoon was not happy about any of this. He was sitting in his office on the human embassy station when the footage first appeared. He watched it 3 times, his face growing more grave with each viewing. Then he poured himself a drink and began making calls. "This is going to be a problem," he said to his aide, a young man named Minho. "The Velt Consortium is already demanding her expulsion. Daha's family is talking about criminal charges. The Marians are claiming their students suffered permanent telepathic damage." She was defending herself, Minho pointed out. "The evidence is clear. Evidence does not matter when politics are involved." Ji-hoon finished his drink. "But this time, we have something better than evidence. We have public opinion." He was right. The footage had changed everything. Across the galaxy, other human students began coming forward with their own stories. Harassment, discrimination, abuse. The pattern was undeniable. Humans everywhere were being treated as lesser beings, and until now, they had suffered in silence. Now they were speaking. And the galaxy was listening. The Academy's High Arbiter, Suho, found himself facing a crisis unlike anything in the institution's 1,000-year history. His office was flooded with communications. Demands from Doha's family for justice. Demands from human governments for accountability. Demands from news organizations for interviews. Demands from other species advocacy groups for reform. He did what any experienced administrator would do. He called a meeting. The hearing took place in the Academy's Grand Council chamber, a massive circular room with seats rising in tiers around a central floor. Representatives from every major species were present. So was Ambassador Ji-hoon. So was Yun Adad. She stood in the center of the room, small and alone, while beings from across the galaxy looked down at her. Her face showed nothing. Her hands were steady at her sides. High Arbiter Suho spoke first. "We are here to determine what occurred in Engineering Sublevel 7 and to decide what response is appropriate." He looked at Yuna with eyes that held a complex mixture of emotions. "The human student will speak first." Yuna stepped forward. When she spoke, her voice was clear and calm. "I came to this academy to learn," she said. "I worked hard. I followed the rules. I did everything that was asked of me. And in return, I was harassed, terrorized, and attacked. When I reported these incidents, I was ignored. When I asked for help, I was told that my species had no standing. When I begged for protection, I was told to try harder to fit in." She paused, looking around the chamber. "So I fit in the only way I could. I learned. I adapted. I survived. And when 7 students cornered me with the intent to harm me, I defended myself. I did not seek that fight. I did not want that fight. But I did not run from it either." She lifted her chin. "I am human. We do not run." The chamber was silent. Ambassador Ji-hoon spoke next. He presented the evidence methodically. The months of documentation. The ignored complaints. The systematic failure of the Academy to protect one of its own students. He did not need to raise his voice. The facts spoke for themselves. When Doha's family representative tried to argue that their son was the real victim, that he had been ambushed by a dangerous alien, Ambassador Ji-hoon played the footage one more time. He let everyone watch Doha extend his claws. Let them hear him threaten a student half his size. Let them see exactly who had cornered whom thought the vote was not close. Doha and his 6 accomplices were expelled from the Academy effective immediately. The administrators who had ignored Yuna's complaints were dismissed. New protections were established for students from developing species. The Academy would pay for Yuna's full education and offer her compensation for what she had endured. But that was not the end of it. After the hearing, High Arbiter Suho requested a private meeting with Ambassador Ji-hoon. They sat in Suho's office, 2 beings from vastly different worlds, trying to understand each other. "Help me understand," Suho said finally. She had every reason to give up. Every reason to accept her place. She was outnumbered, outmatched, alone. Why did she keep fighting? Ji-hoon smiled. It was a very human expression, and Suho had learned to find it unsettling. "Because that is what humans do," Ji-hoon said. "We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the fastest or the smartest or the most advanced. But we have something that many other species lack. We have stubbornness. We have spite. We have an absolute refusal to accept that we cannot win." He leaned forward. "You see a small girl who should have been crushed. I see a representative of a species that crawled out of the mud, survived ice ages and plagues and near extinction, and clawed its way to the stars through sheer determination. Yuna did not win because she was stronger than her attackers. She won because she was more willing to fight." Suho was quiet for a long moment. "Your species is dangerous," he said finally. "Yes," Ji-hoon agreed. "We are, but we are also loyal, curious, creative, and compassionate. We build beautiful things and explore unknown places and ask questions that no one else thinks to ask. The galaxy can fear us if it wants, but it might find that befriending us is a much better choice." He stood and straightened his jacket. "Yuna taught your students a lesson today. I hope the Academy learned one as well." He walked out without waiting for a response. Behind him, High Arbiter Suho sat alone in his office. thinking about persistent predators and death worlds and small girls who refused to break. He had a lot of thinking to do.